Evelyn's mornings always began before the world fully woke. The town of Ashland, Oregon, rested quietly under the fading night sky. And in that stillness, she made her way to the garden. The wooden chair near the roses had become her sanctuary. She would set her teacup on the small iron table beside her, fold her hands in her lap, and breathe in the faint perfume of the flowers. To her neighbors, she was simply a sweet grandmother who loved her plants. But the truth was, the garden was her hiding place, a silent witness to everything she could not say. The roses grew wild but beautiful, a reflection of her heart once soft and full of promise, now marked with quiet scars. She trimmed them with steady hands. But every thorn she touched reminded her of something sharp from her past, a memory she could not erase. Evelyn never spoke about it, not even to her closest friends at church or to her daughter, who called her every Sunday evening without fail. It was easier to smile, to bake pies for the neighbors, to host Thanksgiving dinners, than to confess that part of her had never healed. That morning, the air carried a light chill. The sky glowed with pale streaks of pink, and the world looked hopeful. Evelyn tried to match that hope, tried to let it seep into her chest, but the truth was she felt heavy. She had carried her story for over 50 years, and some days the weight pressed harder than others. She watched the petals tremble in the breeze and thought, they look like they are holding secrets too. Her granddaughter Anna arrived earlier than usual that day. Anna was in her mid-20s, bright and curious, always asking questions, always looking for meaning in things. She carried her coffee mug in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling mindlessly until she noticed Evelyn's face. The older woman's eyes glistened, and though she quickly looked away, Anna caught the hint of sorrow. "Grandma," Anna said softly, sitting down beside her, "why do you always sit here alone?" The question cut deeper than she expected. Evelyn had been asked many things in her life about recipes, about books, about her childhood, but rarely about her silence. She paused, her fingers tightening around the handle of her teacup. She wanted to say it was simply peaceful here, that she loved the smell of the earth and the sound of birds. But Anna's eyes were searching, and Evelyn knew the girl deserved honesty. She set the cup down slowly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Because this garden remembers what I try to forget." Anna tilted her head, confused. She had never heard her grandmother speak this way. Usually, Evelyn's words were practical, warm, sprinkled with humor. But today her voice carried a different weight, one that hinted at a history Anna had never been told. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment as though gathering strength. She had guarded her story for so long that opening it felt like tearing down a wall. Yet something inside her told her it was time. Maybe it was Anna's youth, her hunger for truth. Or maybe Evelyn was simply tired of carrying everything alone. She began carefully, almost cautiously. "When I was younger, before your mother was even born, I used to sit in gardens just like this with someone I loved very deeply." Anna's breath caught. She knew her grandmother had married her grandfather young and built a life with him. But there was never talk of anyone before him. The idea that another love had once shaped Evelyn's life was surprising, almost shocking. Evelyn's eyes opened slowly, gazing at the roses. The petals were soft, glowing in the morning light, and in them she saw echoes of the past. "He promised me forever," she continued. "But life didn't keep that promise. And when it ended, I never spoke of it again. Not to my friends, not to your mother, not even to your grandfather. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would fade." The truth hung between them, fragile as glass. Anna leaned closer, her heart racing with curiosity, but she didn't push. She knew her grandmother would reveal only what she was ready to share. Evelyn touched one of the roses gently, almost as if stroking a memory. "Every flower I plant, every corner of this garden, it reminds me of him. I tell myself I come here because it's peaceful, but the truth is, I come here because this is where I still feel him. In the quiet, in the air, in the silence." For a long moment, neither spoke. The garden filled the space with its own language, the hum of bees, the rustle of leaves, the faint song of a robin perched nearby. It felt as though even nature was leaning in to listen. Anna felt her chest tighten with emotion. She had always seen her grandmother as strong, unshaken, steady, like an oak tree. But now she realized Evelyn's strength wasn't from never breaking, it was from breaking quietly, privately, and still choosing to stand. "Did you love him very much?" Anna asked, her voice tender. Evelyn's lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. "More than I thought I could love anyone. Enough that, even now, a part of me still feels the ache of his absence." The words carried weight, but not bitterness. There was sadness, yes, but also grace. Evelyn wasn't angry at her past. She was simply acknowledging the truth of it. The conversation left Anna with more questions than answers. But she didn't push further. She sensed there was a bigger story waiting to unfold, one that would reveal itself when her grandmother was ready. For now, the important thing was that the silence had been broken. Evelyn reached for her teacup again. Her hands steady now, her eyes calmer. She had let out a piece of the burden she had carried for so long. And though it was only the beginning, it already felt lighter. She glanced at Anna, who was watching her with wide, compassionate eyes, and thought, "Maybe this is why I never spoke of it, because I was waiting for someone who would listen with an open heart." The morning sun climbed higher, warming the garden. Evelyn straightened her shoulders, her voice quiet but clear. "One day, Anna, I'll tell you the whole story. But you must understand it's not just about love, it's about loss, about choices, and about learning how to keep living when your heart feels shattered." Anna nodded, her throat tight. She didn't know what the story would hold, but she already knew it was something that would change the way she saw her grandmother forever. And as Evelyn looked back at her roses, she thought of the past she could no longer hide. The garden had always remembered. Now finally, someone else would too. Evelyn was only 21 when she first met Daniel. It was a summer evening in Oregon, the kind where the sun stayed late and the sky burned gold. She had gone with her friends to the lake, carrying a worn paperback book under her arm. Daniel was there too, sitting alone on the wooden pier with a notebook in his lap. He had a pen tucked behind his ear and ink smudges on his fingers. When their eyes met, something shifted. He smiled an open, boyish smile for Evelyn. Time slowed. They began talking that night. She learned that he loved books as much as she did, that he wanted to write stories the world would remember, and that he believed in chasing dreams even when they seemed impossible. Evelyn was quiet by nature, but with him, words came easily. She found herself laughing more than she had in years. Daniel had a way of making her feel like she was the only person in the world. The weeks that followed became a blur of lakeside walks, coffee shop conversations, and long drives through the countryside. They shared secrets under the stars, and Evelyn felt her heart opening in ways she hadn't thought possible. She had dated before, but nothing compared to this. Daniel didn't just see her, he understood her, and in his eyes she found the kind of love she had only read about in novels. One evening, as autumn leaves began to paint the town in shades of red and orange, they sat together on the edge of the pier. Daniel's arm was draped around her shoulders, his notebook lying forgotten at his side. "Someday," he said, staring at the horizon, "I'll live in New York. That's where writers go when they're serious. I'll write stories that matter. And when I do, I want you there with me." Evelyn's chest tightened with hope and fear. She wanted to say yes, to follow him anywhere. But she was rooted in her small town. Her parents needed her. Her future felt tied to this place. Still, she smiled and whispered, "I'll be there." For a while, everything felt perfect. They were young, in love, and the world seemed wide open. Daniel filled her life with laughter, with big dreams, with moments that felt infinite. She believed in him, and she believed in them. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One afternoon, Daniel showed up at her doorstep with an envelope in his hand. His eyes burned with excitement and fear all at once. "I got it," he said breathlessly. "An internship with a publishing house in New York. This is my chance, Evelyn. This is everything I've ever wanted." Her smile faltered, though she tried to hide it. She was proud of him, thrilled for him, but deep inside, dread spread like a shadow. She knew what this meant. He was leaving when she asked, her voice trembling. 2 weeks, he said. It's fast, I know. But this is it. This is the door I have to walk through. He reached for her hands, his grip firm. I need you to believe in me. I'll come back. I promise. This isn't the end for us, it's just the beginning. Evelyn nodded, but inside, her heart cracked. She wanted to beg him to stay, to choose her over his dream. But how could she? She loved him too much to be the reason he didn't chase the life he wanted. So she stayed silent, swallowing the words she longed to say. The night before he left, they met at the lake one last time. The air was cool, the moon bright, and Evelyn felt as though the world was holding its breath with her. Daniel held her close, whispering promises of letters, phone calls, and visits. I'll come back to you, he said, his voice fierce with conviction. I just need to do this first. She clung to him, memorizing the sound of his heartbeat. The warmth of his embrace, the way his hand fit perfectly against hers. She wanted to freeze the moment to make it last forever. But dawn came, as it always does, and with it the inevitable goodbye. Daniel kissed her forehead tenderly, then pressed a letter into her hand. For when you miss me, he said. And then he was gone, his figure fading into the distance, leaving Evelyn with nothing but his words and her aching heart. At first, he kept his promise. Letters arrived every week, filled with stories of the city, the endless noise, the bookstores on every corner, the way he stayed up late writing by the glow of a single lamp. He wrote about how much he missed her, how every success felt incomplete without her there. Evelyn lived for those letters, reading them over and over until the paper grew soft in her hands. But slowly the letters came less often. Weeks stretched into months, and the silence between them grew heavier. When a letter did arrive, it was shorter, hurried, as though written between meetings and deadlines. He still said he loved her, still promised he was coming back. But the words felt thinner somehow. Evelyn tried to stay hopeful, but doubt began to creep in. She told herself he was just busy, that he still cared. That distance was only a test of their love. Yet deep down, she felt him slipping away. The ache in her chest grew sharper each day, till it was all she could do to smile in front of her family and friends. Then one day, the letters stopped altogether. No explanation, no goodbye, just silence. Evelyn checked the mailbox every morning, her heart leaping with hope, only to crash again with disappointment. Weeks turned into months, and still nothing came. She never knew why. Maybe he had met someone else. Maybe the city had consumed him, pulling him into a life where there was no space for her. Or maybe he had simply chosen his dream over his promise. Whatever the reason, he was gone. And the girl who once believed in forever was left with nothing but memories and unanswered questions. Evelyn tried to move on. She met a kind, steady, dependable man who offered her a different kind of love, one built on stability and care. She married him, raised children, and built a life she was proud of. But late at night, when the house was quiet, she still thought of Daniel. She still wondered what could have been if he had stayed, if he had chosen her. If love alone had been enough, the roses in her garden became her silent companions, each bloom a reminder of the boy who had once promised her forever. She never spoke of him, not even to her husband, because some stories are too heavy to share. Instead, she carried him quietly in her heart, a ghost of a love that had changed everything, and though she lived a good life, a full life, part of her never stopped waiting for a letter that would never come. Years passed, decades even, but Evelyn never let go of the memories. She had built a life with her husband, raised her children, and later watched her grandchildren grow. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. Family gatherings, holiday dinners, laughter echoing through her home. But inside, in the quiet corners of her heart, there was always an empty place, a part that belonged to Daniel and no one else, Anna. Her granddaughter had always sensed that Evelyn carried something unspoken. She saw it in the way her grandmother's eyes drifted away when love stories came on television, or how she lingered in her garden as though waiting for someone who never arrived. After Evelyn's first confession in the garden, Anna couldn't stop thinking about it. She wanted to know more, but she also respected the silence. She waited until another morning when the two of them sat side by side again, tea steaming gently between them. Grandma Anna asked softly, "How did you move on after losing him?" Evelyn looked down at her hands, the wrinkles etched deep, telling their own story. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she lifted her head, her eyes calm but heavy. "I built a new life," she said simply. "I married your grandfather. He was good to me, kind, loyal, steady. We had a family together. I loved him in my own way. But a part of me," she paused, her voice breaking slightly, "a part of me always felt divided between the life I lived and the life I once dreamed of." Anna swallowed hard. She had always adored her grandfather and knew her grandparents' marriage had been solid. To hear that Evelyn's heart had been split in two all those years was both heartbreaking and strangely human. "Did it hurt, Grandma?" She whispered. "Yes," Evelyn answered. "But I learned something important. Heartbreak doesn't vanish. It doesn't disappear with time. It becomes part of you, like a scar. But a scar means healing too. It means you survived." Her words hung in the air, soft but powerful. Anna felt her chest tighten with emotion. She realized her grandmother wasn't telling her a story about regret. She was sharing a story about endurance. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant, her voice steady. "When Daniel left, I thought my world had ended. But life doesn't stop for sorrow. The days keep coming. People depend on you. I couldn't sit still in my pain. I had to choose stay broken or learn to live again." She looked at Anna with a faint smile. "So I chose to live. And over time, I found new joy. It wasn't the same joy I had with him, but it was real. Your grandfather gave me safety. Your mother gave me purpose. And all of you, my grandchildren, gave me light." Anna blinked back tears. She had always admired her grandmother, but now she understood her on a deeper level. Evelyn wasn't just wise because of her eyes, because she had lived through both love and loss, and had chosen kindness instead of bitterness. Still, Anna's heart ached with curiosity. "Do you ever wish you had waited for him?" Evelyn sighed, her gaze fixed on the roses. "Sometimes, but if I had, you wouldn't be here. And I cannot imagine a life without you." "That's how life works, Anna. Every choice carries both loss and blessing. I lost him, but I gained all of you. And in the end, I'm grateful." Her voice softened as she added, "We carry the weight of silence because we think no one will understand. But silence also teaches us. It shows us strength we didn't know we had. My silence wasn't just about sorrow, was also about protecting the life I built afterward. Speaking of Daniel would have wounded your grandfather, and I never wanted that. So I chose silence even when it hurt." Anna thought about that for a long moment. She had never considered the sacrifices her grandmother had made, the quiet decisions that shaped the family she knew today. She realized love was not always about passion or grand gestures. Sometimes it was about endurance, about choosing peace even when your heart longed for something else. "Grandma," she said softly, "I think you're the strongest person I know." Evelyn chuckled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "Strength isn't about not breaking, Anna. It's about breaking and still finding a way to stand. I wasn't always strong. I cried for him for years. I wrote letters I never sent. I planted roses because they reminded me of him. But one day I decided to stop living only in the past. That's when strength began." The honesty of her words struck Anna deeply. She realized her grandmother's story wasn't just about love. Lost It was about what you do after love is gone. The day wore on. The sun rising higher, shadows stretching across the garden. Birds sang from the trees, and the scent of roses filled the air. Evelyn seemed lighter somehow, as though sharing her story had lifted part of the burden. Anna reached over, gently squeezing her grandmother's hand. "Thank you for telling me, Grandma. I'll never forget this." Evelyn smiled warmly, her eyes tender. "One day you'll have your own story, Anna, and you'll face your own heartbreak. When you do, remember this pain doesn't define you. How you rise from it does." That night, Anna lay awake, replaying every word. She thought about her own relationships, her own dreams, and wondered how she would handle heartbreak when it came. But she also felt comforted knowing she carried her grandmother's wisdom inside her now. Evelyn's story wasn't just about loss, it was about survival, forgiveness, and the quiet power of continuing to love even after being hurt. For Evelyn, speaking those truths to Anna had been both terrifying and freeing. She had spent a lifetime holding her silence, protecting her family from the shadow of her past. But now, finally, someone else knew. And instead of judgment, she had received understanding. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt like her burden was lighter. As she sat in her garden later that evening, the air cool around her, Evelyn whispered to herself, "I've carried you long enough." Daniel, her words floated into the night, carried by the wind. Gentle and final. She didn't erase him from her heart. She knew she never could. But she allowed herself peace. Knowing her story no longer lived in silence alone, and as the stars began to shimmer above, Evelyn realized she had done something she once thought impossible. She had turned her pain into wisdom, her silence into truth, and her heartbreak into strength. The attic smelled of cedar and thyme, a space rarely touched except during spring cleaning. Anna had gone up to search for old family photo albums, but as she sifted through boxes of Christmas ornaments and forgotten toys, she found a small wooden chest tucked beneath a folded quilt. The chest was polished but worn, with Evelyn's initials carved delicately on top. It felt different from everything else around. It personal, private, almost sacred. Anna hesitated. She knew it wasn't right to open something that didn't belong to her, but curiosity whispered louder. She lifted the lid gently and gasped. Inside were faded letters tied with a thin blue ribbon, their envelopes yellowed with age. Each one was addressed to her grandmother in handwriting that looked elegant and familiar, though Anna had never seen it before. Beneath the stack lay one envelope stamped "Return to Sender." Heart pounding. She carried the chest downstairs and placed it before Evelyn, who sat quietly in her chair by the roses. The old woman froze, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the letters. "Where did you find these?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "In the attic," Anna whispered. "Grandma, they're from him, aren't they?" Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She touched the ribbon with trembling fingers as though afraid the letters would crumble to dust. "Yes," she said softly. "They're from Daniel." Her hands shook as she untied the ribbon and picked up the envelope marked "Return to Sender." She had never opened it before. For decades, she had left it sealed, too afraid of what it might contain. But now, with Anna watching, something in her heart urged her to finally face it. Slowly, she unfolded the letter. The paper was thin, the ink slightly faded, but the words were still clear. "My dearest Evelyn," it began, "I don't know if this letter will reach you. I don't know if you'll ever read it. But I need you to know I never stopped loving you. New York has been everything I dreamed and nothing I imagined. I found success, but it felt hollow without you beside me. I tried to write you again and again, but my health has been failing. The doctors say I don't have long. All I want before I go is for you to know that my heart never left you. You were always my forever." Evelyn pressed the letter to her chest, tears streaming freely now. Daniel had loved her until the end. He hadn't forgotten, hadn't abandoned her. Life had simply taken him away before he could return. The silence that had haunted her for years was suddenly broken. And the truth was both beautiful and devastating. Anna knelt beside her, holding her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, he still loved you. Even after everything." "Yes," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "All these years, I thought he chose his dream over me. I thought I wasn't enough. But it wasn't that at all. It was time. It was fate. It was something neither of us could control." She closed her eyes, letting the weight of decades lift off her shoulders. The bitterness she had never spoken aloud melted away, replaced by peace. She had finally received the answer she had longed for. The silence was explained, the wound acknowledged. Evelyn wiped her tears and smiled faintly. "I wish I had known sooner. I wish I could have written him back, told him that I never stopped loving him either. But now Now I can finally let go." Anna hugged her tightly, overcome with emotion. She realized she wasn't just holding her grandmother, she was holding the story of a woman who had endured heartbreak, lived with silence, and still chosen to love. Evelyn wasn't broken. She was whole, because even with loss, she had lived fully. That evening, Evelyn placed the letter on her bedside table. She didn't hide it away again. Instead, she let it rest where she could see it. A reminder not of what she lost, but of the love that had shaped her. She told herself she would no longer carry it as pain, but as proof that she had once been loved deeply. And that love had never truly left her. In the following days, she seemed lighter. She walked through her garden with a new ease, her steps softer but surer. The roses looked brighter somehow, the air sweeter, for the first time in years. Evelyn didn't sit in silence. She hummed, she smiled. She even told Anna stories of her youth she had never shared before. One evening, Anna asked, "Do you regret marrying Grandpa?" Knowing all this now, Evelyn shook her head firmly. "No, my dear. Life doesn't give us only one path. I loved Daniel with all my heart, but I also loved your grandfather. They were different loves, but both were real. Without your grandfather, I wouldn't have your mother. Without your mother, I wouldn't have you. I lost one dream, but I gained another. And both were beautiful in their own way." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She realized that her grandmother's story wasn't a tragedy at all. It was a story of resilience, of finding beauty even in brokenness. The night sky stretched wide, stars glittering above the garden. Evelyn sat with Anna by her side, the unopened letters still stacked neatly in the wooden chest. She didn't need to read them all to know their meaning. The one letter was enough. It had healed the wound that silence left behind. As the wind rustled through the roses, Evelyn whispered almost to herself, "Now I know. And now I can rest." Her voice carried no sorrow, only peace. For the first time in decades, she felt whole. And Anna, watching her grandmother breathe deeply under the night sky, understood that love was not always about holding on forever. Sometimes, love was about carrying someone in your heart until the day came when you could finally let them go. Evelyn closed her eyes, soft smile lingering on her lips. She felt Daniel's presence not as a ghost of sorrow, but as a memory of joy. And in that moment, surrounded by roses and the warmth of her granddaughter's hand, she finally believed what she had always told others. Heartbreak doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. The garden, once heavy with silence, now felt alive with peace. It no longer held secrets. It held love that had endured across time, across silence, across loss. And Evelyn, at last, was free.